We know that there's been wear and tear to the point of putting in prosthetic components into your body, both sides on your hips. But I don't care about that anymore. We have our contraindications on what you can't do in terms of deep squatting and that kind of stuff. But we want to look at what you can do.
Yeah.
Dave is one of these guys that is currently fucked up, and we are going to try to rebuild Dave Tate. You know, over the years, trashing the body, doing world-class things under the bar, it takes its toll. Dave's dealing with some big orthopedic issues, and after going through some of his medical history, some of his training history, and his current training status, we have some work to do. That's why I'm here at the elitefts headquarters, and we're going to be spending an entire day assessing, evaluating, and getting a game plan to move Dave Tate forward. All right, so a couple weeks ago, hit me up on email, and it's usually not a good day when you're hitting me up on email for consultations, for help with training. I get that. A lot of the people that we've been working with the last couple of years, shit hits the fan, you plateau, you get injured, you have some problems. That's usually where people come to me. So I appreciate being here because that's what we're gonna get down to. And we're gonna try to get some data out of you today. We're gonna try to uncover some things, knowing very well that you've already worked with the best in the world. So it's humbling for me to go through some of these experts that you've already worked with, Eric Serrano, Meadows, your PTs, your Kairos, Ryan Smith, and people have a pretty good understanding of where you've been, where you need to go. But I almost look at my role here as almost like a quarterback. We're trying to get data from everybody. We're trying to drive it all. We're trying to put it into one thing where we can objectively measure some of this stuff, get a plan moving forward, and not try to be a hero with it, but just try to systemize in a way that is going to be best for your general fitness, your longevity, and trying to achieve more pain-free training. So I always start everybody off with a subjective conversation because it is one of the most important things on starting the communication process, because you know what you need to do. We just need to get it out of you. And that starts with an authentic conversation, really no holds bar. So going through detailed medical history, I appreciate you giving me access to all that. That's really the first step in getting an understanding for somebody coming in. It's not good enough just to come in and be like, all right, Dave, what's your problem here?
Yeah.
You know, that'll take fucking 10 hours. But going in and actually having an understanding, some deep understanding of where you've been. I've been lucky enough to see your videos, read your articles over the last 10 years, so I'm pretty familiar with that. But then touching base with people that actually know what you need to do, it's really, really helpful. But from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we're really looking to holistically program something that is going to get you to the next level in terms of pain alleviation, but also longevity and having physical autonomy, having self-sufficiency with what you want to do, and just feeling fucking better on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I've put a lot of thought into this because a lot of people have asked me, what's your goal from this? I don't have a fucking goal. So I had to sit and think what my goal, and the only way that I can kind of illustrate what I'm talking about is, you ever see the movie Animal House? You got the devil, and then you got the angel, right? The angel is the one that's in my ear saying, look, you got to get somebody to help you navigate this rainforest that you're in. Where the devil's saying, fuck it, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
The devil's a lot stronger voice, like 90% stronger. I just happened to send the email when the angel was in my ear. And then after the email goes out, the devil's like, what the fuck did you just do? Yeah. Then it's this conflict going back and forth. When I say rainforest, let's just generalize it all down to pain instead of health, not health, longevity, not longevity. The last time I can remember being pain-free would be in the 90s. So we had a conversation that kind of sparked more of this answer, is I may not even know what feeling good feels like because I felt bad from a joint standpoint since my shoulder. I mean, the shoulder was the biggest catalyst. I mean, I had powerlifting injuries. You know, there's no denying that when you're in the sport 20 some years, but we're talking muscle pulls, muscle strains, and even muscle tears, which to me are not that big of a deal. They are, but they're not. But there's a certain degree of risk that's going to be associated with any sport. Powerlifting, you're lifting maximum weights. I was not what I would consider genetically the best in the sport. So I had to train harder and push, get closer to that edge than most people would have to. I fell off the edge a lot of times. But those things, muscle pulls and so forth, while at the time aren't a big deal, I actually think I became a master at being able to come back from those very fast, even the tears. But they wear over time. That's why it's called wear and tear. And the shoulder was the first in 2004. That's what retired me, is when I was told I needed a shoulder replacement. And I do not have the function to grab a bar or to bench. So that was the first thing, to where I started thinking, oh shit, now I'm paying the price for the 25 years going back. And then that's kind of when it started. It was always kind of sprinkling a little bit, but that was like the first thunderstorm that would hit. So then that gets managed, and by managed, training around it. So it's still raining, but over a period of years, it's raining harder and harder and harder, because more and more things are starting to become problematic to hip replacements. It's just with a family history of arthritis and knowing from MRIs what my joints look like, the future's not good. So I see the hurricane on the horizon. It's like the hurricane warnings that they get. I'm getting the hurricane warnings while I'm standing in the rain. I don't want to get hit by the hurricane, but I love fucking dancing in the rain. So that's kind of how I can explain it, is no, I don't want that hurricane, because that hurricane can take away something that I love. That hurricane hits hard enough, with the right problem, I never train again.
Right.
That's what I want to avoid. So maybe you'd call it longevity. I would call it taking away something that I love.
Right.
So
I want to touch on a couple different points. I think that the one major thing that you said was that I've been feeling like fucking shit for so long, I can't even remember what it is to feel good or even to feel better. I think a lot of people are in those shoes because they've battled chronic injuries for so long. And it's like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you get a little bit fatter every single day. 10 years down the line, you gain 50 pounds, you don't even notice it, because it's incremental change. Incremental change is the same thing with pain. But if you started out at 100%, totally non-restricted, maybe you're down to 50, 40%. You don't even remember what 100% felt like. So it's bad to say, but sometimes you don't need to get back to 100%. Maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is to just get fucking 10% better.
Yeah.
And that's going to be revolutionary to the way that you're living, the way that you're training, the way that you're going about life. So it's not about being perfect by any means. It's about making some strategic changes so you can feel better. Good enough is good enough for what you want to do. And that's a big thing.
now when I train is when I feel the best.
Yeah.
Except for acute problems like, crepitus elbow pain or whatever it's going to be. But walking around the gym between sets is like, man, this is, now that's what I live for, because then I can move around and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, can the rest of my life outside of the gym feel like that? That would be cool, but it just probably mean I'm going to train more. So
yeah, anytime that somebody is chasing a world-class goal for 10 years, for 20 years, sometimes for 30 years, which you've done, a lot of people that I work with done, they're irrational to what they need because their goal has been so one-sided that nothing else matters. And it's hard to kind of break that mentality, but sometimes going through and actually just getting some objective measure, taking the sport of powerlifting out of it, taking any sport, field or court sport, out of it for a second. How do human beings actually move? What's your level of gross movement capacity? And how do we just get that low-hanging fruit and pick it off the tree so you can feel a little bit better? So then again, the goal that goes back into it is training meaningfully again is more achievable. So That's a big thing that we'll look at today. It's important to have an appreciation for your background, your goals, but it's also very, very important from a clinical standpoint to look at a human being as a human being first. There's certain things that human beings should be able to do, And if you don't, that is a red flag issue that maybe we need to improve, because again, we have multifaceted goals here. It's like, yeah, we want to continue to train and do what we want to do in the gym for fucking ever. We never want that taken away from you. But in order to do that, we need to put first things first, and that's getting a little bit healthier and being able to do some base things. Mm-hmm. So when we go through, we're dealing with some shoulder issues. We've talked in depth about that one. It's not currently symptomatic, but it has some huge restrictions on it. Later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about the mobility phenomenon that everyone's trying to preach lately, and sometimes mobility is not a cure-all for everything. But I'm more interested in the hips, the lower body structure, the lower quadrants, and the way that you're moving generally, because from a conditioning standpoint, from a movement capacity standpoint, the lower extremities, the core, the pillar complex in general, shoulders, hips, core working as a functional unit, that's where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. And that's where we can start to reteach some stabilization, some movement patterns. Mm-hmm. So I always look there first, and knowing that you have past surgical history of 2 hip replacements, that's a good place to start, because we know that there's been wear and tear to the point of putting in prosthetic components into your body, both sides on your hips. But I don't care about that anymore. We have our contraindications on what you can't do in terms of deep squatting and that kind of stuff. But we want to look at what you can do, and what you should be able to do and what you cannot do on that side of things. So we've talked a lot about your training in the last couple months. But in terms of the hip symptomatic presentations, give me a rundown of that. We can go with the right hip first, then we can shift back over to the left. The kind of pain cycles that you're having, if you can just go into depth on that.
If it's the right hip, which is the most recently replaced, which would have been last February, something like that. The only symptoms that I really see there will be the groin tightness if I'm squatting, and it's usually if it's heavier or something like that.
On that right side?
Yeah, and it's some of these things that I don't want to put out there. It's fine as long as I duct tape it. So if I put compression on it, it's fine. It's not a problem. When I take it off, it's not a problem.
Okay.
So it's just during the actual movement.
I hate to call you out on this, but whenever I hear like, oh yeah, it feels tight.
Yeah.
It's usually like, it fucking hurts. So,
it hurts.
Where's the location of that? Like when you are going through squatting, what's the location that you put the duct tape on? Where do you feel that instability moment?
Deep
right
in there. So I'll tape here.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll go up in here, but usually just right on it.
Okay.
It's really all it needs to be. It's not on the outside, so it's not bursa.
Yep.
And that I'm conscious of, because I know what the hip bursitis is, because I've had that, and that's a motherfucker. And there's no amount of tape that's going to help with that. And that's rare. That's completely dependent upon how heavy the weight's going to be.
Okay.
So that's not a problem. Going to the left, the other hip, right now it's dependent upon weather. Right now I feel like there's a knife sticking in the front of my quad right here, and I do believe that's due to the bone expanding, contracting around the prosthetic that's in there, and it's weather or humidity.
How many years ago was the left replacement?
4 or 5.
4 years ago. Yeah. So have you noticed the cycle with the seasons throughout all 4 of those years?
Yes, it's always the same.
Okay.
And it doesn't cause, I can deal with it. I can live with it. It doesn't cause any restrictions in the gym. I can go do anything I want to do. I did anything I wanted to do. But it is there. So it's, for all I know, it could be in my head. But I do think it is the humidity with the bone. Outside of that, I've had no other issues. I don't have the groin issues on this side. I don't want to say that this side was more successful than the other side, because the other side still is only 13 months, which, you know, the bone has to grow through and around to support all that. And it should be.
People don't realize, these surgeons, this is not a delicate procedure. They go in, fucking dislocate a leg, they chop that shit off, and they jam a fucking metal piece into the bone, and then they relocate it with another cup on it.
Yeah,
and then they cut through a bunch of shit to get there.
Yes.
So I feel like sometimes people take hip replacements as like, oh, my doctor said I'll be walking in 24 hours, which they do. You know, I spend months walking people for the first 24 hours when I did my residency, but it's a fucking serious procedure, not because of the mechanical components, but because of the neurological components that they have to cut through in order to get to the deepest layer, which is the bony anatomy. So,
and then the bone to absorb,
right,
or the metal to absorb the bone.
Exactly.
You know, that takes time.
I know you had 2 different types of hip replacements in terms of where they went in terms of the incision points.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. The left was
glute.
The glute, so it was the posterolateral approach. Then you had an anterior lateral approach on the right side.
Yeah.
Recap me. I know we talked about
that. It was choice of doctor. It was timing. You know, when I always tell people if you're going to need a hip replacement, you're going to know you need a hip replacement. There's no, oh, I think I might need. You will know. So time was the issue. I couldn't get back in to see the doctor that did the original, the left one, in time for the other one. I would have gone nuts.
You mentioned that they pulled back some of the gluteal musculature on the left side.
Yes, he didn't cut through any muscle when he went through the glute.
Okay.
So it was kind of an anterior approach done posteriorly. Now with the right one that was done anteriorly, there were issues after that. It swelled up twice the size. You know, it put me in a situation to where, yes, I could walk afterwards, but every time I walked, it swelled more.
Where was the swelling? Where's the edema formation?
The whole quad.
The whole quad?
Yeah, it never went down into the calf.
Nothing into the adductor group, deep into the groin?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Whole leg, groin, knee.
How long was that active for?
3 weeks. It really didn't start to get better until the 4th week. And really nothing helped. You know, it was just inactivity. Staying in a recliner, keeping it elevated for a month is essentially what it had to be. So completely different, you know, and all surgeries are different. You know, where after the first one, I went on a cruise 4 weeks afterwards. You know, this one, I'm still in a chair 4 weeks afterwards. So you can only, I was once told you can only control, say, 40% of any surgery. You can control how you go in, how the stabilizers are trained to be able to help you with your rehab. And you can control what you eat, you know, all the other kind of stuff. The other 60% you have no fucking control over. A knife slips, you know, tissue falls in. I mean, you can't control that. It's out of your control until it's done.
That's the thing about surgery, is that I think there's this misconception out there, especially in the fitness industry and sports performance industry, that surgery equals success.
No, not at all.
It's no guarantee. There's no guarantees when you get cut open and they do something. And I think a big component of that is what you've mentioned. You know, the shit does happen in the surgical suite. They try to limit that. But people usually seek out surgery that aren't willing to do, either they're so bad that they need it, like you said, like you'll know that you need a joint replacement because that day that you can't do this, and you've been out of 10 out of 10 pain for 10 weeks, that's the time. But the other side of things is people are so easy to jump the gun on surgery, and they go in and they never actually look at the origins of why they're having the fucking pain or dysfunction in the first place. So they try to correct out a symptom.
My right shoulder is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
The first one I had done because I had trap pain, and it was a cleanup job. And I'm like, you know what? Pitchers have it done after every season. What the hell difference? I'll go in there, I'll get it done, I'll be back competing, you know, within a year. And I had it cleaned up, was back competing within 4 months. A year later, needed to be cleaned up again. You know, bones, the same thing. It's like, dude, you just took out the bone spurs, you shaved the labrum, you did all this other stuff. Now you got to go back in and there's a new bone spurs, but you can't shave the labrum anymore. It's already gone. You know, so that got me another 6 months. And then after that, it's like, well, we have no other alternatives at this point. It needs replaced. So I go back and think, fuck, did I really need that cleanup job? Because my left shoulder's fine. You know, the other one's fine. So it's usually, it's going to be, it's not one or the other unless it's an acute. You know, if it's wear and tear, it's on both sides. So I think that is a perfect example of what you're talking about, because it retired me from the sport, which looking back was probably a good thing, because I don't think I would have the business and so forth if I was still able to compete.
Right.
But in hindsight, what you're saying is correct. I see a lot of people do that, even with hips and even with big things like replacements, which are huge. That's a cleanup job's one thing, and that's still a major thing.
Yeah.
But, oh yeah, let's just go in there and replace that. It's not a good thing.
No, it's not. And I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of statistics out there in the pain science realm. There's a lot of research in surgical procedures. You can go throughout the body in different procedures and success rates. But Stuart McGill does something really, really interesting. Before he has anyone opt into surgery, which is only a couple % of the people that he works with, he actually does like a fake surgery. You go in and you act like you had fucking surgery when you didn't, and you go through the post-surgical protocols and you rebuild in physical therapy or in your rehabilitation just as you would if you actually had the surgery. The success rates are really, really high because, again, that identifies some of these origins that we're talking about and not just the fucking symptom. Pain is one of the most subjective things in the world. Human movement is even more subjective. Mm-hmm. So when you add those two things together, it's like you might be cutting into something that you have no idea about. And again, there's no guarantee with it. But going through, we know we have your restrictions there with the shoulder. That's something that I'm going to get in, I'm going to assess. There's certain things in terms of joint movement that they are what they are.
Yeah.
There's times and places to look at MRIs, to look at X-rays. In terms of that, those are really, really helpful studies that we can look at. But in other side of things, I don't give a shit what the back or the hip looks like if your movement's not good. Mm-hmm. I want to take one variable at a time, look at it, keep everything else the same so we can try to isolate and improve upon something. I always say that for most people that have movement capacity deficits, I don't give a fuck what your MRI looks like. Like, you are not your MRI. Mm-hmm. If we can get you moving better, the statistics show N=1 shows that we can alleviate pain, we can improve function, we can get you doing what you want to do, even if you have a fucking train wreck of an MRI.
Yes.
So that's one thing that we're going to place a lot of emphasis on today, is we're going to get you into provocative positions functionally. We're going to look at the way that you're moving. We're going to look at some global restrictions, whether it be movement capacity, whether it be motor control capacity. And we're going to get a really good idea of kind of like a baseline of function. Because, this was multiple different things happening. But everyone's like that.
Yeah.
Nobody just walks in and goes, my shoulder kind of hurts right here. It's like, no, my shoulder, my ankle, my back's been bugging me. Everyone has a lot of different things going on, but that again proves to the point that we need to look globally at things before we isolate down and figure out a medical diagnosis for what we're dealing with, which we already have on you because you have a past surgical history, but also more importantly, a movement diagnosis. Mm-hmm. The movement diagnosis is how we take action, how we program, how we meaningfully place strategies into play so we can try to get results from it. Everyone's so stuck on the fucking medical diagnosis. It's like, I am this. Mm-hmm. Like, you are not your medical diagnosis. I'm more worried about the movement because you know what? Past surgical history is in the past. Past medical history is in the past. Yes, we need to abide by contraindications if we have them, but everything else is up to us. The way that we move is up to us. And if we can optimize that, again, that gives us some steam moving forward.
Yeah.
So I want to jump back into this right hip. So before the revision or the hip replacement, have you ever had chronic groin issues on that side?
Yes.
So that's always been a lingering issue.
Yes, that's what was the what I want to say the first symptom that came with the other hip as well.
Yep.
That's when I knew I'm fucked because there was groin pain that just didn't stop. Yep. So I didn't have hip pain. It was groin pain, upper glute, lower back pain. So and this was true with both hips. With the left hip, it became such a complex issue because there's so much degeneration that they were not able to definitively see, is this the lower back that we have to fix or is it the hips that we have to fix?
Okay.
So I kind of made that easy by saying you're not doing anything to the fucking lower back. And then once they did the X-rays and MRI, the lower back, that was not the problem. There was no real issues there at all.
When was the MRI taken to the lower back? About a year and a half ago?
No, that would have been with the left hip,
With the
so it
left
would have
hip.
been 4 years ago.
Okay.
And that came back actually very good. Any issues that I would have had fused themselves. But when they went back and the second doctor x-rayed the hips,
Yep.
there was absolutely no doubt that that was the problem. Because this is why you have to have multiple doctors look at things, by the way. Okay. The first one was a standing x-ray. The second one was a laying x-ray knee side, different positions. And when he came in and laid the x-ray on the table and I saw that the hip was impacted to the point that there were fractures throughout the hip girdle, there's no doubt, there's a really bad fucking problem here.
Right.
But it did start with the groin.
Okay. Now, when you had that before the surgery on the right side, was it always a constant pain that was coming through the groin? Because now you say like you can duct tape it up, you can get a little compression on it, and you can go and you can squat, you can compress it a little bit more, you can squat heavier. Is that something that takes away the pain, or it just makes it functionally doable that you can go in, squat?
With the right one, I have a little bit more documented history. It was the video that I sent you where I was talking about after, when I first went in, when it was first symptomatic, it was the bursitis, so it was definitely flared up. We knew from when the left one was done that the right one also needed done, but it was not as symptomatic. It wasn't as impacted to where there were stress fractures in the hip, but it was definitely impacted. So at that time, there was a discussion of, do we want to do both at one time? Do we want to do one now or do one 6 months later? I said, let's just do one and I'll figure out how to make it last longer.
Yep.
So when it became symptomatic and there was really no symptoms because I was keeping all the restrictions post physical therapy from the left hip training forward for the right, because I figured that's the smartest thing to do.
Right.
Don't let the knee come in, don't squat lower than 90 degrees, don't run, don't jump. Well, I'm not going to do that anyhow. But keep that throughout the training to increase the longevity of the hip, which it did. As soon as it flared up, I knew, okay, shit, it starts with bursitis. So I got the cortisone shot. Then I knew I'm looking at 6 to 9 months. Then of course I want to squat a PR before this happens.
Right.
And so I might have been able to get a little bit more time out of it if I wasn't a fucking idiot, but it was going to happen anyhow.
Right.
It was on track. So it started being off and on. Actually when they gave me the shot, when they hit the bursin, they hit all of them. So when they hit that, I really didn't have any real symptoms for 4 months or so. I mean, it's cortisone. So yes, there were symptoms, I just didn't feel them. So that's kind of cortisone. Then it got hot. And then when it got hot, it was duct tape in at all times.
Okay.
What I feel right now is nothing like what that was.
Okay.
What I feel now is my groin, my adductors are not strong enough because I've had a rough year with training. So I've had to really watch how I build the strength, because my strength is, while weak as fuck, it's coming back faster than what my body's prepared for it to come back. So that's kind of my own dialing back. So if I have to pull the duct tape out, that's kind of me, instead of doing the smart thing and saying, I'm not going to do this set, doing the set, but at the same time realizing, okay, now it's time to bring the weight back down, go through a 3-week wave of lighter weight, build up the adductors to be able to support this, and then work up and see how it is again. So it's imbalanced, and I think that's going to come up when we test.
A couple key things. So you keep on mentioning bursitis. There are like a gazillion bursa sacs in the body. I think that you're referring to like the lesser trochanter, which is like the inside portion of the hip. It's like a little bony prominence that the adductor group hits up against. That's the one.
Yeah, here, but they also hit down. I mean, they hit like 4 or 5.
Okay.
One doctor tried to hit them and missed.
With the cortisone injection?
Yeah, which was really fucking pleasant. Where the other one did get in there, and it did help.
Okay.
As I noted in the email, cortisone was something that I never touched when I competed.
Right.
I would never suggest for anybody to touch when they compete, but I don't give a fuck at this point.
So there's less adductor pain on the right side since. The pain has changed.
Yeah.
But there's still some marked weakness, some functional dysfunction.
Almost definitely. Yeah. Yes. Because I would say, based upon how my year went throughout 2017, I never had what I would consider a good full rehab for the hip.
Yeah.
There were too many interruptions that stopped that. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to test fucked up because of that, guaranteed. Now, the good part of that, if there is one, is it is a prosthetic. So you can do nothing for a year and then do the rehab and be fine. It's not so much tendon and muscle that can scar up and be a major issue.
So with the rehab process, so have surgery, you go out, you get your restricted positions that you can't be in. What was your physical therapy process after the surgery? Say like when you got the clearance to go back into rehab.
For the right one, it was interrupted a lot because of other issues. So I can't say there was one.
Okay.
There was just walking.
Yeah.
And then I do have an abduction, adduction, and glute machine in the gym, which were purchased 5 years ago, just for that reason. The reason I went with the machines is I'm lazy as fuck when it comes to rehab. So I know I will always do those every time I come in the gym.
Okay.
If I have to tie a band up to something,
Yeah.
more than likely, given the choice of two things, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
You know, so that's just knowing my personality and how I am. Are they the best for rehab? Probably not. Are they better than nothing? Yes. So, and then walking,
Okay.
you know, those basic things. Now, granted, post-surgery, yes. As soon as I was cleared and the swelling went away, the leg lifts, you know, all your typical shit that you have to do.
Right.
Yeah, that was being done. Then it was what I'm talking about here, and then interruption, and then fuck it, let's see if I can box squat. How high of a box can I go on? Start working the box down.
This is great stuff. This is great stuff because I see it routinely. I see it routinely with high performance athletes. We go in, we have surgery. We go into some fucking bullshit physical therapy that gives us leg lifts, a couple different things, but your goal is to squat with 700 on your back. What's the time between squatting with 700 on your back and doing a fucking leg lift? That's this bridge program that usually never happens.
Yeah.
That bridge program is what gets us back. It addresses some of those key issues, and more times than not, that's where we end up starting off. If it didn't happen, like you said, we got to re-implement, and we have some opportunities there to re-implement this sort of bridge rehab training program to supplement in what you're doing already.
With the hips, I will say both the surgeons were very good when it came to, you know, what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And in both cases, nothing extremely heavy happened until after 6 months. They thoroughly explained to me why the bone has to absorb through this stuff and what can happen if it doesn't. And that alone was enough to say. And I remember the conversation distinctly because after 4 weeks with the first one, I went in and tried to show my surgeon 315 high box squat for a set of 12. And he watched one rep and he said, "Is this a squat?" And I said, "Yeah." And he handed it back. And I said, "Dude, you didn't even see the other 10 reps, you know?" And then he said, "Let me explain something to you. The cup that's in the hip girdle that we put in there is hanging by screws that would be smaller than the smallest picture that you would hang on your wall. And you're loading 315 pounds plus your body weight on there." And I said, "But my muscles are tense, so they're supporting the weight. So it's not really on there." And then he said, "Well, what happens when it becomes not tense?"
Right.
And so it just, that conversation left me with, this is really fucking stupid. I should wait until this grows around and grows through and is stable then. So from that standpoint, myself, I've been smart on that, but I do see other people that do some really stupid shit when they don't think about that. And they're not thinking that a hip replacement is not a permanent solution. It's a 10, 15, maybe 20-year solution until it has to be fixed or replaced again. So the sooner, is it really worth that 400-pound squat in 6 months if it's going to kick 4 years off the back end?
Well, I feel like guys like you and I, it's an all or nothing mentality. A lot of people were mentally built like this. And that's not necessarily the best way to go about getting back to high performance without lingering issues. Because again, there has to be something that happens between doing bullshit physical therapy and again, doing your performance at a top end level. And most times, I hate to say it, we go, hey, I can't fucking squat 400. Fuck it, I won't squat at all.
Yeah.
But there are things that we can do to rebuild patterns in the meantime. Single leg patterns, hip hinge patterns, squat patterns, as opposed to the actual exercise that we're gonna go in and start lifting again into the future. So this is really good stuff, and this is what's gonna really lay the foundation of kind of our movement screen, our movement assessment, because I guarantee that that's gonna be something that we really hone in on. Some tough questions here. Since that surgery, what does your single leg movement training look like? Nothing. Okay. Cool. I told you it was a tough question.
I mean, no, it's not. It's easy because there's none.
Okay. Deadlifting from the ground?
Rare. Deadlifting off blocks.
Off blocks, okay.
Yes. From the ground, no.
Any top-down approach, RDL, hinging-based movements?
No.
Okay. In terms of, I know you have the shoulder restrictions, but since that hip surgery, have you done any closed chain pressing movements, push-ups, anything along the lines of not laying on your back and pressing a bar or dumbbells?
No.
Okay. We're restricted in the vertical plane, but in terms of your pulling-based movements, your back work, been able to pull in the vertical plane?
Yes. Restricted range of motion because the arm won't go.
Okay. So it's more of a high angle row?
You'll see. I mean, I can get there throughout more sets.
Yeah.
I can get it to open up a little bit, but there's only so far it's going to be able to open up. But vertical pulling, horizontal pulling, that's definitely part of the program in multiple different planes and movements and so forth.
Okay. The last question, any core directed work, whether it be loaded carries, whether it be work in plank positions, anything along those lines, those anti-rotational positions, extension positions?
Core, I'm thinking lower back, abs, torso. Mm-hmm. The back attack is something that I use a lot. Mm-hmm. Back raises, I'll use. Reverse hypers, I don't do the reverse hyper, and I don't not do it because I think it's bad. I did them 4 fucking days a week for 14 years, and when I left Westside, I told myself I would never do another reverse hyper again. I hated them. I'll do them if I have to, but I fucking hate them. Yeah. You know, but I will lay on it and push my toes into the plates under. All right, for abs, torso. Okay. Hanging leg raises, just knee raises. Okay. I suck at them. But when I try to do, and this has been this way for eons, if I try to do a plank, there can be shoulder problems or I shake. Mm-hmm. The other thing I do for the abs would be physio ball, stretching, crunches, sit-ups. But most of that is ISO, because if I try to do anything that's repetitious, it's gonna shake. So I wouldn't say that's a plank, or I wouldn't even say it's a glute bridge, but it's the closest thing that I can get from that standpoint. When the core torso gets to the point that I can support whatever weight I want to squat, then I'll back some of those things down. When it gets to a point to where the squat doesn't feel right, I can tell. The squat kind of is my assessment. Yeah. So I can tell when I have to bring that stuff back in again. Then it will come back in 4 days a week. Okay. It's always there at least 1 day a week, unless I'm completely blowing it off, then it's not there at all. It's all on my mindset. You know, if I'm training for a purpose, then it's always going to be in there. If I'm just training to fuck around because other people are in here training, it's not going to get done.
Any rotational work that you've implemented in?
No.
Okay. Any like anti-rotational work?
Yeah, if I'm not doing it. But I know what you mean. No, no.
Okay. So we're asking these questions not to be like, hey, you should be fucking doing these, but because we want to test this. If you're not
I'll tell you a lot of the things that you're talking about as far as like an RDL, rotational work, and some of these other kind of works. There's inhibition because I don't want to fuck my back up. And the back, it's, while it is clear, from an MRI 5 years ago, it still fucking hurts.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why. I'm not going to do something that hurts. So I'm going to stay in the zone of things that don't hurt. Now, when you deal with normal, and I dealt with this with Sheena working with my son, by the way. When you're dealing with normal progressions, I understand those. That's strength coach progression. You go from here to here. What I would call regressions. Well, what if you can't start at what I would consider that normal start? Where do you start? I don't know regressions. Yeah. I'm not trained in that.
Yes.
You're trained in that.
That's why I'm sitting in the table. Yeah, exactly.
So that's where I would rather not do something and risk fucking myself up more if I don't know where to start.
Yeah, pain changes everything. Pain can be fucking intimidating. It can give you apprehension. It can change the way you move. You can be a self-fulfilling prophecy in the gym. And again, if you don't have somebody who is an expert in that, in dealing with pain on a clinical basis, then you're kind of playing Russian roulette with your body, and that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people, they gravitate towards what they need to do because they know that they can do it. But there is a lot of other things that, like you said, a regress-based model. What's the hardest thing that you can do well? And checking all the boxes in terms of human movement, developmental patterning. Those are the things that, again, unlock some potential, not only for getting out of pain, but also in performance as well.
Yeah, and for me, pain, it isn't really an issue in training. Like if you were to have me to do something and say, look, this is gonna hurt and it's okay, it's supposed to hurt. I have no problem doing that. But a lot of the reason why I'm in the state that I'm in now is because of that. We're making that decision of fuck it hurts, I'm still gonna do it anyhow.
Right.
Leads to more wear and tear if you don't know where that's okay and where that's not okay. And obviously throughout my history, I have not made wise decisions on what's okay and not okay. So what I've kind of evolved to over the years, because of, when you get your hip chopped off, you get your, fucking femur cut off, you make different decisions. So it's got to the point of, it hurts, fuck it, I'm not doing it. And you just stay completely away, where maybe it's one of those things that I should be doing, but I don't know. So it's not like I'm not doing it because it hurts. Right. I'm not doing it because I know the long-term implications of doing something that hurts over and over and over and over again. And I don't like that.
That's the big difference between somebody that is looking to compete, whether it be field or court sport, whether it be on the platform, or somebody that wants to live pain-free lifestyle, is that, yeah, we can get some of the big heavy movements back in, we can do what we want to do, but we got to do some things that are going to rebuild our capacity to the point where we can do those a little bit better and we can tolerate them a little bit better. Pain is not an all or none phenomenon. It's something that our body is telling us for a reason. It's a complex thing in terms of the emotion, in terms of the psychological aspect of pain, the movement aspect of pain, the biopsychosocial model of pain. It's fucking complicated.
Oh, it's very complicated. I can make the complicated very simple for anybody that's listening to this. If you're in the hospital and you've ever had a surgery and you come out of the surgery and they have you on pain meds, the first thing they're going to say is, look at the little smiley faces on the wall and tell me where your pain rates. Well, I've done this enough to just say 10 all the time. 10, 10, 10. That way they just keep the drugs going and I don't remember the first day. But let's take that now, where it really does. I mean, that second day where they start to, morphine runs and they start to pull the meds. Now that fucking hurts. JL doing his shit fucking hurts. That's like way up there, right? Now you walk into the doctor's office because you strained your ankle. Hey, look and tell me what smiley face it is. The context is completely changed but yet they're using the same fucking smiley faces.
Right.
Where you want to say, it really fucking hurts, it's an 8, but it's like a 2. But if you say 2, they're going to send you home.
I try to describe it as an 8, 9, or 10 means you're going to the fucking hospital right now.
Yeah.
So if you tell me in my office that you're in an 8 or 9 out of 10 pain, like we're calling 911. Like that's how fucking bad it is. So when that kind of humbles people a little bit and they back it down and they actually look a little bit more objectively at it, again, pain is a subjective thing.
Yes.
It's just to get the conversation rolling. I want to talk a little bit more about that though, because we've been talking a lot about squatting, we've been talking about training. I just want to talk about daily living, the activities that you're doing here at the office, the activities that you're doing at home with the family, the things that you're being restricted in pain, or things that you're just not fucking doing because you know you're going to pay the consequences for it.
Ask away.
Well, give me your daily basis.
Just sitting here right now, my upper middle back is fucking killing me. My right hand's numb. Lower back hurts. But I'm not moving. Now, if I move, there's something else that's going to hurt. I mean, that's just normal, everyday shit, you know. So I'll shift, I'll move, you know. And when I shift and move, it's to move out of pain and into something that doesn't hurt. So now my back doesn't hurt, but my fucking right shoulder just started to. Right. So there's constant something in there. Now, where the restrictions are from a daily life is, and yeah, I guess it would be I can't walk downstairs. You know, I have to go each foot on each step. I can't go one step in front of the other all the way down. I feel
I'm laughing to myself because I was listening to a podcast on the plane yesterday. I think you did with DeFranco, and they were making fun of you in 2005 about not being able to walk downstairs. Yeah. So that's been a while though, where it's like this restriction with bringing yourself downstairs 1 foot at a time. So you have to side shuffle? Side shuffle or just step on the same step. What do you lead with? What leg do you lead with when you do that? You lead with the right?
Now, going up steps is the same. If it's a really good day, then I can go up steps 1 foot at a time. If there's rails, I can go up the step one step at a time. If there's no fucking rails and there's stairs, my first choice is, do I really have to go up there? That's the first thing.
Elevator.
Because I might be able to get a few step,
yeah,
and then go.
What's the biggest restricting factor to the stair negotiation?
Weakness.
Where?
The left leg.
Left leg.
It's the push off of either leg, and this was something that with actually the right leg. I'm sorry. This was an issue with my left leg after my first hip replacement. It took me forever, 9 months, I bet, 10 months, to be able to put my left foot on a 2-inch box and push off without using the back leg.
Like a terminal knee extension, tiny bit step up?
Yes.
Okay.
I could not do it. It took a year to do 4. And the only protocol that actually made some breakthrough was to break it down in static iso holds instead of trying to do 1 rep, rest, 1 rep.
What position with the static holds?
Started at the top with a slight knee bend eccentrically.
Okay, so split stance?
Yes.
I like the way this is going.
Yeah, so that's where I am with the right leg, but haven't had the time to be able to start really doing that.
So implementing isometrics, multi-angle knee, hip isometrics in a split stance, that's something that you saw pay off right away.
Yes. That brought that right back into play. But it's one of those things where as soon as the squat started to feel normal again and it started to go up again, then fuck it, I quit doing it because there's no other indicator or marker to be able to kind of determine that. Certain things like, the washer, closing the dryer, we got front loading washers and dryers. They scare the shit out of me. Because it's not just getting down, but it's getting down and bending.
Gotcha.
So it's like, fuck that. If you were to ask me to stand right here and do a deep squat, it's not going to happen. I could do it, but it's going to fucking kill knees, groin. From that standpoint, back's going to round too much. there's going to be a lot of breakdown from that standpoint.
So on a daily basis, I'm trying to break down your positions per hour on your normal day. So say it's a Monday, pretend I'm not here a couple Mondays ago. What does your daily basis look like in terms of your positions?
Seated or at home, seated in a recliner.
Yeah, so seated in the office, couple hours.
Yeah, but I'm up far more than I'm up sitting here.
Gotcha.
Especially since we've been over here in this location.
Okay.
So my watch will tell me I'm up at least 1 or 2 times per hour.
Okay.
You know, so it's whatever it says, I can look it up, like 18 times per day. There's never more than an hour that I'm sitting straight at one time.
Okay.
If it's watching TV, then
what's the number one limiting factor to you being like, oh fuck, I need to get up right now?
Boredom. Physically, that's what it is. Physically, it would probably be the back.
Okay.
Middle back.
So then driving in and out, how's that with the shoulder?
Driving's fine. There's no real issues there. I can drive I can drive 4 or 6 hours. Now, driving is actually better than sitting in an office chair because your feet are moving, your arms are moving. I got movement. So as long as there's movement, it's a lot better. Sitting straight, like if somebody was to sit me in a hard back chair and say, you gotta sit here 5 minutes, I'd go fucking nuts. Yeah. You know, and that would be from hips back. Pretty much, it's usually back or neck. And if I'm in my office, because it's a L-shaped desk, and I have to turn because the way the computers are, the shoulder and neck will flare up a lot because I'm looking over at this screen, then looking at this screen, and it's
usually on that right side.
Yes.
Talk to me about, like you just said, like pain coming down into the arm, into the hand. Is that a recurring thing with some traveling-based pain, that radiculopathy, things coming down from like a neurological standpoint?
In the right arm, yeah.
Right arm
with the hand.
Is that like a daily basis thing? Like you can definitely feel that?
No, it's not every day, but when it's there, it's there. You know.
Give me some frequency. Like how many times a week do you think like either your hand goes numb or you can feel that traveling pain coming down into the right side?
Right now, it's not been too bad because my body weight's somewhat under control. If I get really fat, if I get over 280, then it's constant all the time. I'll wake up because of it. If I stay under 270, and my plan is to stay under 270 and I go down more, then I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue. I think it's stemming from the shoulder and it's a nerve issue, to be honest.
Yep. Okay.
It's definitely not, oh my God, what's the hand? It's losing my mind because when your hand's fucking numb all the time.
Palsy?
Not palsy, but specific to the hand, wrist.
Carpal tunnel?
It's not carpal tunnel. It's not carpal tunnel.
I was trying not to say carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
Keyboard warrior over here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not carpal tunnel. I've had that looked at. It's definitely not that.
So on your deadlifts, bringing it back into the gym, have you noticed any weakness in that right side?
I use hooks and straps. So
Always?
Always.
Okay.
I have no reason to use any type of underhook.
So for like a rowing based movement or something, were you...
Same.
Always straps?
Always the same, but this is the shoulder that's got restricted range of motion too.
Okay.
So while the strength is the same, if 15% of the range of motion is taken away off each rep, is it the same? That's one of those questions we really can't answer.
Right.
But
when's the last time you went without straps on any of your pulls?
Well, the only thing I pull rarely. I mean, if I do pull,
any pull-based movements, any
I
rows,
don't
any
use
pull
straps
downs,
on anything except for deadlifts.
Okay.
And the only reason I use it on the deadlifts is that I'm usually going to do deadlifts with chain. I hate deadlifting. I fucking hate it. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do something that's going to make me to punish myself. So it will be 275 with 8 chains for as many reps as I can do. So
if you're on a neutral grip pull down, like a high angle row.
No, I don't use straps on that shit.
So no difference between the grip strength on your right and left hand?
No. Okay. No. I mean, John comes out, we train back. That's usually what he wants to train when he comes out here. Okay. He uses straps on everything. I don't use straps on anything. They're just a pain in the ass, and I don't have any grip issues. Okay,
that's what I was looking for.
Especially with the weights that we're using.
I want to jump back in. We're kind of going all over the place here, but we have a lot to cover. I want to jump back into this lower back pain. I want to jump into the way that it's presenting on the left side, the way that it's coming down into that left quad, and talk me through that. Is there any traveling pain that going down? Is there any constant pain? Anything coming down below the knee? Any numbness in the foot? Just kind of give me a narrative with that if you could.
I do have plantar fasciitis.
Yep.
Depending upon the day, right now I'm dealing with it. Let's say 10 would be a scale of I'm not able to walk.
Yep.
So, or I have to use the orthotics just to get from my bed to the bathroom. I'm at a 2 right now, and that's coming down from where it might have been at a 5. So I'm in orthotics 20% of the day. So I am now, but usually if I'm here in the office about half the, I'm only in the office 4 hours a day. I mean, these guys can probably tell you more than I can.
Any traveling pain that's coming down into the backside of your calf?
No.
Any pain that travels down into your shin?
No.
Any pain that travels into the midline of your hamstring?
No.
Any pain on the outside of your knee, like IT band area?
Right side?
Right side. Not the left though?
No.
Okay. And then that quad, is it traveling down there or is it just that one spot?
It's like a knife right in that one spot.
Okay. So there's really no traveling sensation. It's just the one spot that sits there. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you done anything to try to like alleviate that one spot?
Punch it. I mean, just.
Yeah. No foam rolling, no stretching, anything?
No.
Okay.
It's just, it bothers me when I walk, and it doesn't happen enough to be that big of an issue.
Yeah.
You know, so today it's definitely an issue. Yesterday it was an issue. The weather's starting to get a little bit better. So if it gets a little warmer, tomorrow it probably won't be an issue.
From a diagnostic standpoint, I love things like this, like the weather flares it up. Things like weather, it just identifies a weak link, like quickly brings it to the surface. So it's really, really useful for us because like when everyone's feeling good, that's never the time to assess.
Well, exactly.
It's when you're symptomatic, it's when we can actually provoke some pain responses. That's how we see the actual human function. When everything's well and good, you know, we're not going to change anything.
Yeah, well, I don't have it well and good. So.
We're going to be working on that. So bringing this kind of full circle here, you know, we've reviewed pain history, we have surgical history, we have medical history that you and I went in depth here. Really, we're trying to focus in here on this first meeting on orthopedic standpoint, movement standpoint, and really just trying to work on that first. I mean, this could be a 10-hour long conversation, but it's something that we need to hone in, look at first things first. And right now, with a conversation with you last week, it's all about trying to implement in some smarter training strategies around the movement cycle. You know, we are going to layer in some other aspects of a well-rounded training program, cardiovascular health, conditioning, mobility, that kind of stuff. But right now, we're really laser focusing in on how you're moving in general as a human, but also as a lifter. We got a pretty good understanding about pain cycles. I know some of this stuff is harder to talk about because it's like, well, fuck, it's constant, it's always here, it's always changing, I need to change positions. Again, it's complex, but it's something that we have a pretty good understanding about. And this really leads, the reason that we have these conversations is that, like you said a couple things here that we'll go over when we go into this next segment, but you said a couple things here that it's like, I want to fucking test that. I want to test a lot of that. I want to see how you do with it, because that is a red flag. People don't even know because they're used to themselves so much, they don't know that, hey, maybe this is the key. It's having somebody else hear it in your own words.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is what we're going to look at. So really, this lays the foundation for what we're going to start with. So our next steps here is to get just a general movement screen on you. Difference between a screen and an assessment. A screen is to identify red flags. We already identified a fuck ton of red flags here. We're looking for some objective red flags in a movement capacity. From there, we go into more of a clinical-based assessment. Assessment is for diagnosis. We're going to diagnose not only what you have going on in terms of medical diagnosis, but again, a movement diagnosis is what we're worried about here. We're going to get that movement diagnosis, and it's going to give us a clear indication on where we need to go in terms of remediation, in terms of programming, in terms of recovery, and trying to bring up those weak links.
All right. Something that just came to my mind that I did not put in my medical history.
You missed something? It was like 58 pages.
I did. My left pec was completely ruptured, and this would have been in 91. Tendon was screwed back in.
Do you have hardware in there currently?
Yeah.
You still have hardware?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's when it came off, the muscle was actually fine. It just rolled under the nipple, so they just had to pull the tendon, put it back in. Maybe late 98, my right pec major, split in half.
On that same side?
No, on the other side.
On the other side?
No surgery required. Tendon was still attached, but there is there's a huge hole. There's a huge dent there, which most of the work with any pressing from that point forward didn't really involve a whole lot of the pec major because it's torn in half and it's laid down into the pec minor.
Okay.
But that, I believe, if you want to look at the cycle of what led to the shoulder, this blows, so this has to compensate.
Absolutely.
This shifts over, then this shoulder gets repaired, and now I got a front to back imbalance, so then the rotator cuff needs to be reattached, and so that was kind of the cycle of.
That's very interesting you say that. There's really hard data on injury rates and re-injury rates in terms of bilateral deficits. So if you injure, say, your right shoulder, it's something like 6 times more likely in a year's time to re-injure not only your right shoulder, but your left shoulder on a bilateral basis. That's the #1 predictor of re-injury is past injury. So like you nailed it on the head. That was the kind of the start to this right shoulder is the supercompensation pattern, because again, bilateral pressing, a lot of it, 1-2% shift. That's a lot when you turn in terms of volume, in terms of intensity.
Oh yeah, and then all that led into, after the shoulder, because the bar wasn't able to sit on my back right, I had groin issues when I was powerlifting for a year. So all that, I can go through the whole history of how it all, one spins into the other and spins to another, and the only way that you can actually stop the cycle is to stop what you're doing completely and don't train, don't powerlift, stop that movement pattern, reset them in a way.
Yeah, that's the key. Stopping is one of the worst things that people can do. Doing nothing is not acceptable. Doing nothing is not acceptable. Doing the right things, that's the plan. And it's just as stupid as plowing through, trying to go through pain, as it is to do fucking nothing. Those are not good options. Finding the right thing to do, getting some professionals that know what they're talking about, that are trusted, and building a plan to try to get back to what you want to do. That's the key. But it's those intermediary steps that are just so pivotal. So this is what we got going on here. So definitely like the work that we're going over, this isn't just coaching. This is on a clinical standpoint. This is clinical professionalism. So anytime that we're working with somebody, we always try to get them to sign an informed consent. This is physical therapy, this is diagnostics, this is medical-based examination, assessment, and plans of care. So anytime that we work with somebody, we have them sign an informed consent, just to let you know exactly what we'll be doing. So here's our informed consent. And then we don't know if we're gonna do this or not, but I brought a bunch of my tools with me. And if it leads us down where we want to do some hands-on treatment, it's important to sign off on some of these hands-on treatments as well. Anytime you place your hands on somebody, that's something that a clinician should be able to do. And then under the scope of practice, that's something that a clinician is licensed to do. So anytime that we do that, we have you sign this as well. This is for some dry needling, for anything that we'll do manual therapy-wise. And it's something that just shows that you're able and willing to go through with some of these techniques if we do it. All right, thank you.
There's going to be a lot of things that are going to test fucked up because of that, guaranteed.
So I want you grazed. I don't want you to deload at the bottom there. I don't even give a shit if you touch your knee down. It's not about that. It's about controlling the eccentric moment, turning it around and coming
It's
up
easier to
concentric.
touch your knee down.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. World-class compensators find a fucking way every single time.
What's breaking the eccentric concentric chain, which is going to create more dynamic explosive force, like a box. I'll not only compensate, I'll justify it.